Is that started?
Yes, sir.
Is the recording on?
Yes, sir. Recording.
So thank you everyone for joining to this webinar on the special topic inspection, search and seizure under GST. Today this topic are more important when these days the level of powers of the GST authorities, when specifically the anti-evasion team, the DGI authorities, Director General Intelligence team, has increased on account of wherein they have been given the civil powers as well as the power to arrest. So these days, it has become very vital for every professional to understand that what are the powers which assessee has and what are the powers which they can and should invoke during any of the inspection or summon proceedings when the assessing officer are imposing so much of power and threat of arrest, and if that is not being made, then they ask for any undue advantage in the form of either payment of tax or otherwise as well. So in this webinar, we will be discussing the entire life cycle of inspection, search and arrest under GST, wherein every assessee should know what they need to follow and how they need to follow, and when the professional need to be encroached for any of such matters. So if you see that the first level which is there, if the first roadmap is the first step is the taxpayer is being given a notice in respect of the inspection on account when the person, when the assessing officer, they feel that there is a reason to believe which should be on recorded, and they get the powers from the JC to inspect any premises of the business. Then they go and do the inspection. And whenever during the inspection, they understand that there is any document or any material which is important for any for the authorities, then they encroach for search of the and seizure of the products as well as any of the material which are required to be seized for doing inspection. And the third step is issuing a summon. So once they do the seizure, then they call the officers of the company and every person and any person who is related to that transaction or any person which they feel is connected with that transaction. They issue a summon statement under section 70 calling upon the information as well as personal oath statement from the assessee or any of the person which are connected. And just after the search and seizure, they take the specific advantage of threat and the powers they have in terms of the arrest and others in pressurizing the assessee or the taxpayer for the payment of tax before even issuance of the show cause notice. So what is generally being seen is that department of the anti-evasion team, they force the assessee to accept any liability which as per the preconceived notion department feel that this is something wrong, or a circular trading has been done, or any inadvertent input tax has been availed without actually receiving the goods. Anything which the department is of a preconceived notion is incorrect, and they ask that liability to be paid even before the issuance of show cause notice, so that the kind of revenue pressure the department is having from the government, they can get that satisfied from the assessee before even adjudicating the matter by the department. And after the issuance of, in case if everything goes with that respect and the assessee does not deposit or deposit on a partial amount and asks to raise the show cause notice, then after the show cause notice, there is an adjudication procedure wherein the tax, interest and penalty, if any, is required to be paid to save. We will discuss that aspect as well. So these days, what is happening is assessee are being aggressively summoned and asked to make statement in a particular manner, and the threat of arrest are being given. And sometimes even there is a manhandled or hurt to the taxpayers or assessee when the anti-evasion team feels that there is some kind of information which is guarded with the assessee, and they are trying to take it out from the assessee by invoking all the powers they have with the government, in terms of which, wherein the one of the biggest power is the power to arrest. So with that intention, we are just collating all the things. Now the first aspect which we gonna discuss is what is the inspection. So we need to understand that why that inspection starts. The first and foremost section is the inspection which is governed by section 67, wherein that section 67 starts with the power of inspection, search and seizure. So where a joint commissioner or an officer higher in rank, there has a reason to believe that a person has done any of the following: suppressed any transaction of supply, or claimed excess input tax credit, or suppressed stock of goods in hand, or contravened any of the provisions of the act to evade the tax, then in these circumstances, he can authorize in writing any other officer to inspect any place of business. So what is important is any place of business of the taxable person or the person engaged in business of transporting goods, or the owner or the operator of warehouse or any other place. So inspection can be done at any place of business which are connected with the taxable person or a person engaged in business or transporting of the goods or the owner. So there can never be an inspection on a reason to believe at any other premises apart from this. Once the inspection is being carried out, then the next step is where we generally listen to this terminology specifically in the income tax is the search and seizure. So under the GST, that comes in when a departmental officer, which is the DGJI, Director General of Intelligence, they feel that anything which requires a seizure of goods or any document or books or anything relevant to the proceedings are secreted, then they seize the goods. And so you can very well see the search, the section, the seizure, search and seizure starts with on a pursuant to the inspection carried out or otherwise. Search warrant can be issued if a joint commissioner or an officer higher in rank has a reason to believe that the goods liable to confiscation or any document or books or things relevant to any proceedings are secreted at any place. In any place. So now the powers of the officer has widened to from the place of business to any place which are not even a place of business. It has a wider jurisdiction wherein they can search any place, whether connected, whether business premises or not connected, to retrieve any document or books which are relevant to the proceedings on which they have a reason to believe. And during the search, authorized officer can even force, open door any premises, break any almirah, seal the premises where the access is denied, where any goods, document, books or things liable for seizure are kept. So the first part is the inspection and the second part is search and seizure. Normally, what we have generally seen is that if the things can be managed with the department and with the departmental cooperation and between the assessee and the department, it might be possible that an inspection cannot undergo a search and seizure level. It can be concluded even at an inspection level as well, basis on a reason to believe. What is generally happen is on a reason to believe that if some information they have got about any assessee wherein they have inspected or searched the premises, and with regard to that, they got the information that these purchases were made from X party and they were selling it to various parties. So they go to every party, and in among all the parties, they select one party and go to that party for the inspection. And if during that inspection they see that the things are actually being undergoing, the business is going, there is no fishy, there is actually no artificial transactions which are going on, the businesses are existing, the warehouse is there, the goods are there, then they may not convert that inspection into a search and seizure proceedings. But if these things are not there and there is anything which they feel that that inspection has to be converted into a search and seizure, then they may call that inspection into a search and seizure proceedings. So it is very important that whenever in any of your client or any of your personal level case, a department has come to inspect or inspection is being carried out with the department, then you should cooperate in very healthy manner, and you can even call your professional at that point of time so that the things can be managed with the legal and within the cause of merits and with a mutual understanding with the officers that what exactly they are trying and why they have, although they are not required to disclose the reason to believe, they are only required to ask that what is, and they are coming with the specific powers. So they may come up with a specific notice that we have come to do the inspection. So you can very well see the inspection notice from them. There is always a DIN which is assigned, that which is an identical number, unique number, so that you should know that they have a order in place for coming to your premises and they have not come just out of the way. So it is very important at this point of time to check and ask from the officer the inspection notice, and as well as the DIN they may give you, so you can check, verify that that inspection are being done by the genuine officers and they have the powers and that number. So it might be possible that you should not be in a situation wherein any person is coming to you and asking you such a level of document on account of fraud as well. So that is one way you can check. Now, so these are the general questions when someone asks us that what are the reasons for inspection and what are the reasons to believe practically. So when these are the cases, these are generally the cases wherein name of the vendor list of the registered person have indulged in fraudulent availment of ITC or engaged in circular trading, purchased from a person who is also under investigation, goods which are liable to confiscation are secreted in any place, books, document or something which is useful or relevant for proceedings are secreted. So it might be possible that in certain times you purchase the goods from some middleman and that person does not give you the invoice and you actually don't know from where the goods are coming. You know the bill and the middleman person, because there are so much of trade middlemen which are in certain level of trade. So in such scenarios, that is the biggest problem, because they actually not aware that who is actually the seller party. They generally have the copy of the invoice from the seller from the middleman, and they got the goods from that middleman by way of transport. So these are the cases wherein these kinds of circular trading are possible, wherein middleman is actually involved in getting the bills from X party but goods from Y party, wherein the goods are actually coming from Y party and the bill is coming from X party, and as a receiver you are only receiving the goods and the invoice copy from the middleman. So you on a bona fide belief accept those goods and even the invoice copy in your books of accounts and make the payment to the middleman, so that the middleman can make a payment to the buyer of the goods, and they are more like an intermediary which are playing the role of But in that scenario, what is more important is that these cases, in these days, these are the cases wherein the circular trading, wherein the genuine receivers are being penalized or being searched or being inspection has been done on the ground that when they have purchased from a person which is actually a circular trader person who is actually issuing only the invoices without the goods. So in that scenario, these are the cases wherein maximum queries are being coming that what they need to do, wherein the department is asking to pay the tax or reverse the input tax credit because even the party who has issued the invoice has not disclosed or even disclosed, then they are covered under some level of circular trading. So they say that you also might have done that transaction and you are also involved in that transaction wherein the circular trader, the X person, is involved. So that is more of the cases wherein the inspections are being done on a basis of reason to believe, and they have a reason to believe because they have inspected some premises and wherein some circular trading or some chain has been busted out. So that's the kind of reason to believe wherein they can come to the premises. So what we have generally discussed just now, right now on the last slide, is importance of the DIN under the search inspection. So DIN is mandatory for all inspection, search and seizure notice. White specific circular dated 122/41/2019. In case DIN has not been quoted on such notice, then the same are void ab initio. And the taxpayer shall need to ensure the authenticity of DIN number on this website cbic.gov.in in tab verify CBIC DIN on the GST portal. So it is very, very important nowadays when a fraudulently activity, and specifically after COVID period when there is always a kind of fraud possibility is there. As a company, so now the next question is, as a company, do taxpayer need to see the copy of the order issued by the Joint Commissioner, or is it authorized copy, or do we have a right for seeking information? So various judicial pronouncements have held that department is required to document the reason to believe. However, the company has no right to seek the information with regard to reason to believe. That reason to believe should be in writing with the department, and whenever any kind of a court proceedings happen, and they should be in a situation to disclose that reason to believe to the judicial person for to justify that the proper accordance with the act was done in respect of reason to believe. Now the general question or information which are being asked, what are the general questions which are being asked by the officer during the inspection? So this question is again very important, that when the inspection team come to your premises, what is generally happen is a kind of a threat and a kind of a atmosphere of terror is being created, wherein that's something that these officers have come and they will now do the inspection search. And even if a genuine assessee feels that there is something which might be possible that they are doing inadvertently, and that can create a hassle for them. So in that scenario, what are the general questions which are the inspection officers can raise and cannot raise, and you are supposed to answer? And this level of mutual trust and cooperation is very important, because if you will not cooperate at this point of time, then the inspection may go into a search and seizure level. So that is very important, that the questions which will be raised during this point of time should be replied in a very cooperative manner, even though certain information are not available, and a practice should be maintained that if anything which is being asked, then you can say that we will provide in the due course of time, or if you allow us more time, then we can try to arrange that information. So the person should feel that the assessee is a genuine assessee and they are making every effort to cooperate and to provide information. There is nothing which they are trying to hide from them, and that is the feeling when they have more confidence on the assessee and the taxpayer. So at this point of time, you all have the authority to ask your professional to come to your premises, because it's more like an inspection wherein information can be asked, and professionals who are more aligned with these level of inspections, and your own accountant and the person who is more involved in GST compliance, they should be present, so that any question which shall be raised, you should not be replying to those which are not required, and you should be replying to those which are specifically required for that level. So what is the general thing which we have just illustrated, but these are not the exhaustive list. These are some of the illustrative list which we have provided, wherein one of the document is copy of input invoices, e-way bills with specific focus on the truck number and its existence, two-way reconciliation, copy of lorry receipt for delivery of goods. What is your SOP? Because if there is certain circular trading, they feel that some circular trading person got busted, and from them either you have purchased or you have sold. So they may ask you the questions: what is your SOP for the supplier? What is your SOP for the purchaser? What are the general approvals which are required? What is the selection criteria? How you know that party and along with other parties, because they may focus on that specific party as well as other parties, so that you may not feel that they are only asking for those parties basis which the reason to believe were created with them to come. Validation, so they may validate the proof of delivery of services. What is your SOP for all approval of invoices for payment? If the payment to those invoices on which they have a reason to believe are being made, wherein approval are being specifically taken from the general process. Let's suppose on every accountant sign the payment, but specific to one invoice on which they have a question. That invoice has been paid that has been paid on the approval of the director. So that all things, and what are the exceptions scenarios wherein the payment, so that they may check everything which is evolving around the process and the general, and what is the specific cases, what are the specific scenarios you followed in those cases wherein they have a reason to believe. So they may ask all those questions which are evolving around the company process and the documentation. It might be possible that they may grill you that you have that these parties are being inspected and they have taken your names in a negative manner. But I should suggest you that you should not be looking out what they are saying. You should be telling what you have, your genuinity part. You should not be coming out in a way that what is they are telling. You should be telling what is exactly the process, what is exactly you have done, rather than thinking that what they are saying in terms of and making and diverting your answers according to them, so that you can influence him in terms of that you are genuine and you are cooperating. But that cooperation does not mean, and it is very, very important term, cooperation does not mean answering into that what is actually assessing officer are looking to answer from the taxpayer. So it is very, very important that you should not answer in a way what is the answer the officers are expecting from you. So these are the very important aspects which you need to see while answering for the inspection and search matters. Now that, yes.
Kapil, may I ask one thing? You very well described how we should conduct ourselves in the trial investigating proceedings, that we should answer what we have actually done, not rather following the line of the investigating officer, but actually we should tell the truth, what we have actually done. But can you throw some light on what precautions a company can take while dealing with middleman or purchasing from an unregistered person, so that if it is a circular trading and inadvertently they are getting into it, they have some safeguard for them if such proceedings come up before them? What are the precautions they can take?
I think what is more important is that whenever, since this is something which is a specific facts based, and today we are more discussing on the aspect of post-mortem, but it is always a valid question, because why these all the inspection and search is happening because of those reasons only. So what is important for every assessee, whenever they know that there is a middleman involved, and the middleman is not the person who is actually giving the invoice. The middleman is only a person who is facilitating the trade and making the goods receiving to the receiving party. And this is happening. So it's not that every company is a big company and maximum companies are SME, wherein SME are dealing with a middleman in some of the cases. Like if you go to in North India, there is a Chandni Chowk, and wherein there are so many middlemen which are providing the goods, but actually they are getting the bills from X party. But in that scenario, what is important is you should see the three things. The section 16 compliance are very important. So section 16 compliance says that you should be receiving the invoice copy. The tax should have been paid. You have a document to substantiate that you have received those goods. And the tax should have been paid to the government. So in that scenario, if you have the copy of GRN, which is called goods received note, if you are receiving the goods, it is with respect to the specific case and for other case as well. So in the general case as well as for that case, you have the copy of invoice, you have the proof that the tax has been paid by them by way of, because you are matching, you are looking out that that specific vendor is making a payment by way of looking and matching your GSTR 3B of the vendor, that the GSTR 3B of the vendor has been made for that month on which you have received the invoice, and also the GSTR 1 in your 2A that invoices are reflecting. It might be possible that after 1 year that invoices will not be reflecting because they may remove it. In that scenario, what is more important is whenever you have these kind of middlemen or these kind of transactions wherein you always have a doubt, what is the ideal process is you should maintain a documentation screenshots that these are the times when 2A was matching and you have that 2A copy in your hand. So every month you are taking a copy of the 2A in your books of accounts or making a separate PDF copy so that whenever in future anything happens. And last but not the least is the e-way bill copy. It might be possible that in the purchase transaction you have not generated the e-way bill and the person who has supplied the goods might have generated the e-way bill. So it is very important that on a monthly basis you are also reconciling your e-way bills which are being received on your GSTN number with your purchases and the invoice copy, so that the reconciliation is being done on a monthly basis. I know these are all the lengthy process, but again, notwithstanding what I have just said, what is more important, there are judgments in the pre-GST regime under the VAT and even under the GST regime as well, wherein it has been said that on the default of the supplier, the receiver should not be penalized. And there is a Delhi High Court judgment under the GST, which is being argued, wherein a stay was given. A final order is awaited. But in the pre-GST regime, I specifically remember I personally were there in many cases wherein we have taken a positive orders from High Courts, from Madras High Court to Delhi High Court, wherein it has been specifically mentioned that a recipient cannot be penalized on default of the supplier. So these are always a stand which every assessee might have if they are not even a good in terms of maintaining a healthy documentation. But the ideal documentation they should have is the copy of invoice. They should match the invoices with the 2A and the returns are matching. And these are very basic things in nowadays.
Thank you.
I'm sure. So now coming to can the officer ask the questions which are beyond the reason to believe with XYZ? So what is more important in that scenario is the question is that can any party be called for any summon proceedings, or can any party be inspected based upon the search which has been reason to believe. So what we have also mentioned is the officer can ask questions beyond the specific. So what is given in this question is that if is being carried out and the officer is not asking those questions which are on which has to do with the accounting process. It's not only about the tax principle they want to know, they want to understand everything which is evolving around us so that they can understand more. So what is inspection and the search is a Panchnama. So these are the These are the ideal things which is my voice audible?
Yes, voice is audible.
Now it is audible. Yes.
Sorry, I think I lost some connection. So coming to what is Panchnama. What is Panchnama? That is more important. Is when in a specific scenario, like wherein the department has come to your premises and they have inspected the things, and in that scenario, just hold on. I think my internet is showing unstable. So let me check so that is my screen visible?
Your
Yes, sir.
screen is visible, but your voice is not coming properly.
Is it coming now? I think it might be better now.
Yeah, let's proceed. Now it is much better.
So now is it better?
Yes, yes, much
Yes.
better.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, so we were discussing about what is Panchnama. So the Panchnama is a document which is being given after the. So what are the questions specifically? First of all, that is important. That what is Panchnama and whether the department will give the details of reason to believe in the Panchnama. And what is generally recorded in Panchnama is Panchnama admissible in a court of law because the person on whom the inquiry has been conducted might deny that he has given the statement in pressure. So what is important first of all is what Panchnama is a document recording certain things which occur in the presence of Panchis, which is called a witness, and which are seen and heard by them. The seizure of goods and the document are normally made by drawing of Panchnama at the time of withdrawing of records after the search, which mentions the details of records of goods seized. An INS 02 is a document issued providing the details of document or goods seized. The provision of Panchnama is made to convince courts that officer have in fact have carried out such searches or made such searches. In the case of Yaqub Abdul Razak Memon, one of the ground challenging conviction was that the seizure were made were not done with the proper procedure, and the Panchnama were not in accordance with the procedure as laid down under Section 27 of the Indian Evidence Act. In this case, Honorable Supreme Court had highlighted the importance of Panchnama, observing that the Panchnama is a document having legal bearing which records evidence and finding that an officer makes at the sense of an offense or crime. However, it is not only the recording of the scene of crime, but also of anywhere else which may be related to the crime offense and from where incriminating evidence is likely to be collected. So what is more important is that Panchnama is evidencing all the things which has happened during the search and seizure, and whatever they have collected and taken, they will mention in that Panchnama what all witness, whatever initially, which started a kind of, even if, because in the initial times, whenever a person comes, there's always a kind of hassle, even from the assessee, to not do such things. So they may record everything in and out which happened during that Panchnama, because that becomes the entire document for them to produce for any of the adjudication level, what happened and what was the documents which they were recovered on a after the reason to believe they made for doing that inspection. Now the question which always available is, what are the legal recourse which are available in the seizure of the goods, and what are those goods that can be seized? So what is important is that all documents can be seized by them which they be reason to believe are important with regard, but all documents or objects which are taken during the search and operation, that must be returned unless they require it for any examination, inquiry or proceedings. For seizing any goods, INC INS 02 shall be issued. So you must be ensuring that INS 02 shall be issued by them, so that you have all documents, what they have taken away, all goods they have taken for their after the seizure. So if the document is not required, then it should be returned within the period of 30 days after the issuance of show cause notice. And what is important is, seized goods can be provisionally leased by the GST authorities on the execution of bond and furnishing of security. What is more important is, if you see that they have said in this is that after 30 days they may return the goods in terms of after the issuance of the show cause notice. But what is more important is that it has been mentioned that after the issuance of show cause notice. But what is generally happening is, if in these cases the show cause notice issuing time is very lengthy, and initially what will happen is that it takes a long time to raise a show cause notice by the authorities, and they always want the assessee to pay the taxes before the issuance of, by imposing so much of threat of arrest and other threats of penalty and things which they may do to impose pressure on the assessee. So there is always important that you may release the goods on execution of bond, or in terms of document on execution of bond, security, applicable tax. If no notice is issued within a period of 6 months, then all such goods are returned. In some cases, the period of 6 months can be extended by the commissioner for another 6 months on a sufficient course. So although in the GST law, what is important is they have prescribed that the officers are required to issue within 6 months, but this generally are not at all happening. So we have not seen that they are issuing the show cause notice. They always try that to payment shall be made, and they may hold the case and will not conclude the proceedings. So in search and seizure proceeding, goods are liable for confiscation, can also be seized. According to section 130 of the CGST Act, the following goods are liable for confiscation: if the supply is made in contravention of provisions with the intention to evade, if the goods not accounted on which the tax is liable to be paid, if the goods liable to tax are supplied without applying for registration, if during the search and seizure proceeding the taxpayer does not have any goods which are liable for confiscation, then no other goods can be seized. However, to protect the interests of the government, the department may invoke section 83, attached provisionally property, including bank account. So what is happening is, if you're having a goods which are not required for confiscation, so which are not, on which you have all the healthy documents, you have a copy of invoice, then they cannot seize those goods which have a proper documentation. So they can only seize those goods which are being on respect of these cases which we have discussed, but they will not seize anything which has no linkage with what has actually been done by the assessee, where an actual confiscation was required, but that confiscation of goods has actually been sold or was not there at the time of inspection or search and seizure. So it is very important that whenever the inspection team may say that we will seize the goods, so there are plenty of judgments which has said that you cannot, because it may actually hit the business cycle, and it even hamper the business cycle of the assessee. So it is very important that you should know your rights, and you should know that these are not the cases they may do, but they may use these things to threaten the assessee so that the assessee may make the payment on account of these pressures. Which department is being generally involved? I have always mentioned about that Director General of GST Intelligence, DGGI, is a law enforcement agency under the Ministry of Finance, which are responsible for fighting the tax evasions in India. And what are the practical difficulties faced by the taxpayer during the summon and after search and seizure? Department will ask you to pay all possible evasion of tax with the interest and penalty. Otherwise, leave the taxpayer with the following option. Either they may say that we will seize the goods to safeguard the tax, or they may say that we will close the factory, or they may say that attachment of bank account of the taxpayer, or they may use, which they have actually the power, is the power of arrest. We will discuss in detail about the arrest. We will discuss in detail that what all things you can do. Further, authority generally requests to make the payment in cash instead of utilization. So we will also discuss in the next slide that what is exactly how, even if you feel that there is a requirement to pay the tax, then whether you need to make the payment of tax via input tax credit or via cash, because generally the officers may ask you to pay via cash only. So these are very important points which you need to know in the next slides. Now, after all this, what is happening is once the inspection or search ends, now the real problem starts, because in that scenario, what will happen is that assessing of the inspection officer or the seizure officer, the DGA officer, from superintendent to inspector, they may do everything on every day to make the life very difficult for the CFO or for the company tax head or for the accounts person, whosoever were involved during the inspection, and any other person which they may feel, because they want to create an atmosphere that if you will not do these things, then they may arrest, they may ask you to close the business, they may even do such level of things, they may attach the bank guarantee and make the business disruptive for all of them. So that these are some of the threat they may use for doing. So so you need to have a proper patience that while dealing such, and it is very, very important to involve all those professionals which are specifically made for these kind of things, because if you will not encroach them, then it might be possible that you will end up dealing with such matters or dealing with such facts or dealing with involve into the pressure that you may end up paying more taxes even which you are not required to pay. And when you feel that you may take the refund in any of the adjudication, then the adjudication will take ample time to conclude. Until that time, whenever the conclusion, must have lost so much of interest, and even certain losses might have been done on account of that. So, and even paying that amount will make your case more negative, because that's something they may impose that you have agreed and that's why you have made the payment. We will discuss upon that under which section they may ask you to pay, and actually which section, even if you want to pay under protest, then what are the options you need to do. We will discuss that in next slides. But in this slide, what we are discussing is what is the summon, because any person who is getting a notice of summon, they may feel a terror that something and negative has come, and now it is very important that we will handle these cases. And I am telling you that actually the summon statement is not even very I'll say a simple document. Again, it's not even a document which may be very negative for the company. It is a document which needs to be handled very tactfully, so that whenever you are applying to such level of things, you should be replying on merits, and as well as taking care of all precautions which are there under the judicial law of the CGST Act and as well as the CRPC, because the section 70 is being read. So what is important is that under section 70, the government the power, or the section 70 talks about what is the power to summon persons to give evidence and to produce document. What is mentioned in this section 70 that officer has a power to summon taxpayer whose attendance he considers necessary for personal appearance, or to take oath, or affirmation on statement of facts, or appearance through authorized representative, or to produce any document and evidence necessary to inquiry. So any person who the officer consider necessary, required with the case, can be called off for the proceedings. So it is not important that he may say that we will not, because if that person has been issued a summon and that summon is as equivalent, such inquiry proceedings shall be so it is very well mentioned that these proceedings, such inquiry proceedings which are referred in subsection 1 shall be deemed to be a judicial proceedings within the meaning of section 193 and 228 of the Indian Penal Code, which are CRPC, and you need to make sure that you comply with these summon notices. And any person can be called. It is not important that person who are linked with that transaction can be called. Any person which they may feel. But we will discuss the case law that it is also very important that they should have recorded in their document that what was the intent to call that person. Because in one of the Supreme Court judgment, it has been mentioned that calling any CFO wherein already the information has been provided by the financial manager, it is they have quashed the summon statement. So we will discuss that what are the legal remedies you have in respect of the summon statement. So what is important is the first question is whether if you provide any statement before the summon, whether that can be used as an evidence against you or any other person. So what is more important is the section 70 has to be read with section 136. So section 70 talks about that a summon, and section 136 talks about yes. So section 136 of the CGST provides that if a person who has made a statement, so circumstances in which the statement recorded under is relevant. So test of relevance is there under section 136. So every summon statement which is being given under section 70 has to satisfy the test of relevance under section 136. And the test of section 136 of the CGST Act provides that if a person who has made a statement, so there are two conditions. So rather than two conditions, two alternative options that when the test of relevance has to be there. So test of relevance under section 136A is being provided and 136B is being provided. 136A of the CGST Act that talks about when a person who made a statement is dead or cannot be found. So it is being mentioned a statement made and signed by a person or appearance in response to any summon issued under section 70 during the course of any inquiry or proceeding under this act shall be relevant for the purpose of proving in any prosecution under this act. So any summon statement which is being issued in respect of any inquiry that can be used for the purpose of proving any prosecution or for any offense under this act. So it is very important that the statement which were issued under section 70 that can be used as an evidence to prosecute anyone, but that can only be done when the conditions which are specified under section A and B are or A or B are satisfied. Under A is being satisfied when the statement person who has issued the statement as dead and cannot be found or incapable of giving evidence or is kept out of the way by adverse party or whose presence cannot be considered without the amount of delay. But what is more practical is 136B, which provides that if the above circumstances do not exist, then the statement is treated relevant and admissible if the maker of the statement is not only required to be present in the proceeding before the adjudicating authority, but the court is also obliged under the law to examine him. So it is very important that court will examine him and the court has to form an opinion whether the statement which is being given can be admitted as an evidence in the interest of the justice. So these has been done so that the principle of natural justice should not be hit on these points. So various judicial pronouncements have been given in respect of this, wherein Honorable High Court of Chhattisgarh has held that statement to be treated as relevant and admissible under the law. Mere recording of statement is not enough, but it has to be fully conscious application of mind by the adjudicating authority that the statement is required to be admitted in the interest of justice. In case such statement is straight away treated as relevant and admissible without considering the above mentioned circumstances, it would not constitute the relevant and admissible evidence material at all and as per the law. So what I'll give you a practical example. What will happen is, let's suppose if some person gives a statement against you, wherein you are not involved, but that person is taking your name. So the department and that person has to satisfy the test of relevance under section 36 with 36B, 136B, whether that statement is correct or not. It is not only that a statement is being given and will be accepted to, but that statement can become a reason to believe, to inspect any premises, do any search or arrest. We will discuss that arrest as well. So now what is more important is to discuss this one another linked concept is whether the statement made before the officer are admissible in evidence or not. So Supreme Court in the case of Ramesh Chandra Mehta, they have said that wherein the question involved was whether or not the statement is protected by granted under Article 20 subclause 3, which talks about nobody can be forced to give self-incriminating statement. The next question which is there was therein, do they fall foul of section 25 of the Evidence Act? No statement, which talks about no statement before police can be examined admissible as evidence. Third, Supreme Court said that these provisions do not apply in case the statement to central excise officer or custom officer. So what is generally happening is when any statement is given under the CRPC when some person police has arrested some person for any theft and that person has given a statement. So the police cannot use that statement till the time that satisfies the condition. So that statement cannot be used. So these are the Article 23 and Section 25 of the Evidence Act overruling that statement. But that happens only when the police, in the case of police, because the police have the powers to raise the charge sheet, but the GST officers are not in consensus with the police, because the GST officers, the central excise officers or the custom officers, they do not have the power to raise the charge sheet. So in such scenario, they do not the exclusivity which is there under the for the CRPC and which is there, which under the normal is not applicable under the GST, wherein even if a statement has been given, if that satisfies the condition of section 136, then that statement can be used as an evidence for any person against whom that statement was issued. This is said because the police officer, I just already mentioned, is entitled to file report under section 173, the closure report or the charge sheet of CRPC, but such power is not present with the central excise officers and other officers. Therefore, these officers are not considered to be exercising police. Therefore, the protection of section 25 Evidence Act and the Article 23 of the Constitution is not given to the central excise with a statement which are being issued under section 70. So this is negative for the GST, because any person who is issuing a statement can be a negative for any person till the time that meets the relevance test. So if a statement is made as a compulsion, then the assessee. So what is more important is it generally happens when the department asks you to give any statement which is more one-sided statement and accepting certain facts which the department wants, and they may create a pressure, terror while making the statement. So it is one of the point is whether can I revoke, retaliate my statement which I have given. So one of the important aspect which has been covered in the Supreme Court is Vinod Solanki, that a person can retaliate the statement, and the onus to prove that the person has retaliated is on the department and not on the assessee. So what I'm in a simple words, if I have to talk about that, in the Vinod Solanki case, the person arrested and arrest was not shown. When the arrest shown, then presented before magistrate with injury marks. He retracted the statement given, but the FERA authorities and tribunal rejected the retraction as it was not proved. Then the Supreme Court held that the onus to prove the retraction is not on the department, but on the person retracting the statement, is on the department and not on the person. So it means that it is the department, they have to prove that this statement was correct and the person which is recalling a statement is not correct. So it is very important that if a person has to retaliate the statement which they have given in a summons statement, they should do it ASAP after they have made it. Should not that they have spent the ample time and then a retraction was done for that statement. It is very important right to assess when a statement is not independent, which was given under section 70. Now the one of the very important aspect, because the department never wants a consultant to appear in a proceedings on the taxpayer, on behalf of the taxpayer, and they even do not want the person, a professional, to be present in a summons statement. In that scenario, no, the outright answer is consultant can appear in any proceedings of section 70 if they are calling off any document or information, because it is a general. Section 70 gives you the power that authorized representative, and authorized representative is also being defined under the GST, which even include the chartered accountant, lawyers, and other professionals which are being specified under the law. But department may generally insist on appearance of the client and not on the consultant, because they want the CFO, director of the company, to present. So now what is more important is that the Supreme Court has specifically said that wherein the court allowed the presence of advocate to bring the confidence while recording a statement. But definitely advocate cannot assist the assessee in recording a statement, but can be present while this proceeding is going on. So these are more moral boosters for the assessee, and as a safeguard specifically in those cases wherein manhandling or abuse is being observed while taking a statement on record from the assessee. So these are some of the very important section to know for each and every professional. We will also discuss about the arrest provisions in the next slides, and that is very, very important for every professional to understand. So what are more important to be kept in mind is, while replying to someone section 70, you should use the words alleged in the reply, use more of factual, more of merits to distinguish. Apart from merit, it is essential to refer the case law judgments. Don't accept your allegation till the time imposed, till the time you actually want to accept, or even if you are accepting on account of certain things which you are aware you do not have enough documentation, you can do it, but that should not be accepted in a that should be done in a way that it's just a peace of mind. You are doing it because you have not done any error. It is just you want to close the proceedings, if you want to close the proceedings. And then under section 70, whether the officer can request any information. Yes, the officer can ask you any information under section 70. We have discussed section 136, which has to be read. So now what is more important is circumstances in which the statement recorded under section 70 is relevant and admissible. So in one of the case, Punjab Court of High Court of Punjab and Haryana in Jindal Drugs, wherein clearly if this procedure which is statutorily described by the parliamentary is not followed, it has to be regarded that the revenue has given up the said witness, so that the lines on this has to be regarded as misguided, and said statements have to be scored from as they were not relevant for proving. So these are those cases wherein the section 70 statements were not admissible, and these are the relevant case laws which were discussed, wherein it was the statement taken was not independent. So these are the cases wherein circumstances in which the statement recorded under section 70 of the CGST Act is relevant and admissible. The said provision is a statute in book seems to have made to serve the statutory purpose of ensuring that assessee are not subject to tax, fine, punishment on the basis of certain recorded during investigation which may have been obtained under the police like of investigation. So this is all which we are discussing as section 136. So that has to be seen very carefully since we have limited time, so we will not be covering in detail of on section 136. What is more important is that the summon is being regularly issued to CFOs and the top management, and in respect of this there are multiple circulars. Department has said that you should not call for a the top management if the information can be asked and replied by way of notice, or even by way of lower management which are regularly involved in the execution of those cases. So circular number 200 of 1989 and then 2007, wherein CBEC has clarified that issuance of summon in a harsh and legal language causes unnecessary mental stress and embarrassment and instills fear in the mind of the receiver, which also become a source of harassment or even unethical practices. Then continued with that in 2015, they also clarified that a summon need not always be issued with a simple letter, when a simple letter politely worded can also be served for the purpose of securing document relevant to the investigation. So what they said in this, that if you are asking for any document or information, you should not issue section 70. Now you should use a simple language. Recently, on the 14th of August 2020, very recent, the Director General of GST Intelligence has issued a circular wherein it has been mentioned that CO is not to be issued summon at a first instance for GST evasion in order to reduce the impact of investigation and ensure that a summon for personalization only when specifically required. This would imply that a person appearance of an individual is minimized. The DGGI has also prescribed that summon for calling of information should also not be issued in a piecemeal manner, and as far as all relevant information gathered at one go. So these are one of the things, and they have also covered that they should allow in case of inspection or search, they should allow the children the religion ethics should not be hindered while the inspection is there. So that is very welcome circular which has come, because these officers were imposing so much of pressure on the CFOs and the tax heads, so to come every daily basis and sit with them for hours, so that a kind of a terror can be created and work can be hampered, and then they may pay the taxes under account of the pressure. So when a summon can be challenged, so what we have covered is whether we can challenge the summon statement in one of the case in Delhi High Court in 2019, National Building Construction Company, wherein it has been held that patent and gross misuse of power, grave incorporate hardship to the assessee, inconvenience, malified intentions, then a summon can be challenged. In one of the case, what happened was the assessee, the CFO was located in some other state, and the inspection officer who were doing an inspection for other case, they were sitting in Delhi and they were calling that CFOs multiple times, and that travel was required. So that was a kind of a hardship when that information can be provided by way of one statement or by calling of information, then asking these things. Then in such scenario, a summon can be challenged. It's not even that you can challenge the summon at a right go before the High Court, but it requires a grounds which are called malified inconvenience, grave hardship to the assessee. These are some of the grounds which has been circumstances where courts have quashed. In Sudhir Durodas, Honorable Jharkhand High Court, it's a landmark judgment wherein importance of corporation and quashed the summon issued to top management of the company, wherein a finance manager has already provided the information, and the court has said that whenever the action of the assessing officer questioned in the matter of summoning witness, then respondent may show reason for summoning the witness from record. In the case of TRF Limited, Commissioner of Central Excise, again Jharkhand has quashed the summon where show cause notice was issued with a predetermined mind that a guilty was already being shown. So it has been said that these were quashed. Rights and duties when summons were issued. What are your rights and duties? This is very important case, Ajit Singh versus DRI. In the Supreme Court, the department cannot ask anything to answer in some way. So what is being given in a short, what I can conclude is that the department cannot ask you to give a reply what is favorable to you. So repeated summons were issued and authority want admission of guilty from the assessee. So Supreme Court stated that department cannot test cooperation by stating that the assessee is not replying with the authority they want to hear. So what they want to hear, that does not mean a cooperation. What is your fact? So wherever I am talking about in these kind of cases, it is very important that you stick to what you are trying to say. You should not accept and modify your answers what is more favorable to the department. So in the case, another Supreme Court judgment allowed the presence of advocate to bring confidence while recording a statement. While making payment of tax, which option must be opted for the taxpayer? Payment under section 73(5) or payment under protest. While making a payment, you should be discussing about the categories of what is that kind of demand. So what I can only say at this point of time is the kind of things, there is ample things which are. So we will cut short this presentation, and we will cover certain balance aspects which requires, like while making the payment, which option, section 73, 74, what is under protest, how that needs to be paid, section 73, 74, how they needs to pay, when they can pay, what are the powers of arrest. These all things we can cover in the second part of the slides. At this point of time, we can conclude with these questions. What is balance cover in the second part of the web series is arrest provisions, what are cognizable, what are the case laws when arrest cannot be made. These are some of the aspects we will cover in the next part of the slides. I think thank you for this kind of webinar wherein we are discussing the specific impact of search, seizure, inspection, and summon. We have covered till now the summon, the inspection, the search. What is more left is, again, which is very important in the second part of the web series, is arrest provisions, how that payment needs to be made, how you need to pay, under which head you can pay, what are the challans you need to use, what are the legal language you need to use while making the payment. So these all will be covered in the next part of the series of search and seizure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kapil. It was quite an informative session. Looking forward for your next part.
Yes. So anything which has to do with regard to the things we have already covered in this part of the web series?
So, as you said, Kapil, that department should, as the Supreme Court has repetitively said, that the top management should not be called to join investigation if the information required by the department can be given by a consultant or a lower management. But we have seen that department is calling top managements despite several guidelines issued by the Supreme Court. What should be the steps top management should take if they are called upon straight away without calling the lower management or the consultant?
So since very recent circular has been issued for the specifically for the top management, what is more important is that this is actually a very good question, because this is a practical question. Because in these days, the officer, the period of 1 month after the inspection or a search carried out is very important, and even a very can be made a very dramatic by the department, because they may call every day, they may call either phone, or they may ask to sit in the department with the officers. So, and they may also ask the or CFOs and the tax heads to sit with them and deliberate, and they pay the taxes before even the issuance of the show cause notice. So what is important is that you should tell them that whatever they want to say, they should made it on writing. That is more important, and that should be on consensus. So you should not be giving everything. Majority, you try to make it more of a documentation. So if a person is asking you documentation on day 1 and 10 information, and asking you to call for other 10 information, so request that even for them to issue a notice, so that you can elaborate your case, you can make your case more strong whenever you want to approach the High Court via writ procedure, that there is certain things which are being lacking in the inspection proceedings, or the business is being impacted. when they ask you to the CFOs to they call the CFO, so it is very important that they may issue a notice. So if it is very important that if these kind of the circulars are being issued by the department, and circulars are always beneficial for the assessee. So if these kind are not being followed, so you always have a ground to file a writ before the High Court that these procedures were not being followed and controversy is being. Since our department has recently issued these circular only because if information is being can be provided by the lower affair officer, because the CFO is not generally involved with every transaction. If a tax manager is involved, so the tax manager is providing. We have discussed the case law wherein the finance manager was provided the information, and now they were calling for the CFO or the director of the company, and that summon statement were quashed by the High Court, wherein on account only that when the information were provided and they want certain level of information in their own manner, it's not a kind of a cooperation. So you need to make a documentation to make your case good for the High Court, and that is more important. If you make your case good for the High Court only when you ask more documentation, you ask more everything on a legal from the documentation perspective, and once you start in, then they understand that they are building a case. Even the taxpayer is smart enough. The taxpayer is actually working with a professional, and because the department never wants a professional to be present with them, because they understand that if a professional is involved, then they may even use all those powers which are there under the law, and they may make a case more negative for the department, because department wants to take maximum revenue out of all these inspections on account of the revenue pressure from the government.
Thank you, Kapil, for your answer.
I have one question. Is detention or seizure by police authority without procedure under GST or customs act is sustainable or not?
Sorry, your voice is very low.
Yeah, I'm saying, is detention or seizure by police authority without procedure prescribed in GST or customs act is sustainable or not?
So when you are saying that police authorities, so police authorities are different from the custom and central excise. So do you mean to ask some question related to central excise or a police? Because a police is seizing certain thing that has to deal with some other law. Because here we are more talking that if a seizure is being done by the central excise authorities under the Customs Act or under the because they are the person, the Director General, because there is a authority of DRI which are involved for the customs for the revenue intelligence. So what exactly is your question, if you can explain?
Yeah, my question is, there is a detention or seizure by the police authorities without following the procedure which is prescribed by the seizure under GST and customs act. Is it sustainable?
I think if the police is seizing anything, then it is not there is a specific procedure under the CRPC they might be following. And it's nothing to do with the Central Excise and GST Act, because these are not the laws which requires adherence. What is required, the adherence of that laws rather than of the Central Excise and the Custom Act laws.
Okay. Thank you.
Done. I think that's all for today. We will be discussing in the next slides more knowledge on power arrest, which are very much important. So it is very important for everyone to see the next webinar. We will be sharing the details, and also the next webinar we will be taking more questions from the audience. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Kapil.